Hello there, and welcome to the Board Game Barbecue podcast, episode 171. And hey, it's another mathematical palindrome. It's the same forwards as backwards. Woo! That excites everyone in the world except everyone and not me. We have some fantastic folks joining us tonight. First of all, I'll start with my closest compatriot in Def Callion. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And a little bit further away, just 2 states away, is Jules. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks.
And then also joining us from another hemisphere is Paul Grogan. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me on again. 171, that's an impressive achievement.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, I realised the other day, we've done more podcast episodes than Shut Up and Sit Down.
Get in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are doing 2 a week. I think we're gonna tick off some decent numbers. But if you haven't listened to the show before, Paul actually featured on an episode previously, which means he's our first returning guest, which hopefully means it's a start of more to come, and not that no one wants to come back.
What was the episode number that I was on? Because I was trying to remember when it was.
I think it was 96.
Right.
It was in the 90s, that's for sure.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah. So, obviously, welcome back, and it's great to have you back on the show. Obviously, this time around, we've got a couple of different hosts. So you were on last time with Def and Mike. So
Michael, yeah.
Very interested to talk to you about your channel and everything that's been happening. So we'll get to that very shortly. But before we do, just wanted to do a quick mention of our Brisbane Board Game Barbecue Game Day, which is on February 12th. There are still some tickets available, and teachers' scheduled games went up earlier this week. There's still a couple of seats left to a few games. I'm personally looking forward to teaching Ticket to Ride Europe at the game day, because that's the game that got me into the hobby. So if you're someone who's listening to this and may not be super into the hobby or may not sure if this is for you or not, I implore you to come along, have a game of Ticket to Ride, and see where it all started for so many people out there. But on top of that, there's loads of games going on. There's even an Ark Nova versus Terraforming Mars battle going on, which currently Ark Nova is winning as far as people who have signed up. So lots of great games, and it's just going to be a great fun time. So go to Eventbrite and get tickets for that if you haven't already. But without any further ado, we're going to shoot straight over to Paul. I guess the best place to start is what's been happening in the last 4 months, 5 months since you've been on the episode. Yeah, since you've been on.
Well, that's the thing. Lockdown and COVID has had such a strange effect on everybody. Like that, episode 96 is when I was on. I don't know whether that was during COVID times or not, because time confusion has all gone all over the place. But of course, the pandemic's affected everybody in different ways. In some ways, it didn't affect a lot of the stuff that I did on the channel. It did affect the ability of friends to come over and us to do playthroughs. But I decided that I didn't want to stop doing that, and I started doing remote playthroughs. So this is where I would have almost exactly the same setup as I currently had, but then I would share all of my screen over Skype, so that the players playing remotely were able to see it, in real time what was happening. Through the whole of when we weren't able to have people around, I was doing a lot of remote playthroughs. But then in the UK, lockdown started easing around the summer of last year. And at that point, I was able to start having friends around again. But I didn't stop the remote playthroughs completely, because there were some games where I want to do it and it's just not feasible to, get people around if it's during the day or something. So I'm glad I've managed to work out how to do the remote playthroughs, and I definitely wouldn't shy away from doing them again, even though they're a lot of extra logistical work, especially for the card games where, if it's a cooperative card game, for example, I will actually manage all of the hands of the cards. So I will have all of the decks made up here, and then the people who are playing remotely, they will have their own deck. So they will shuffle their cards, they will draw their cards, so they know what they've got, and then they'll say, Paul, I'm playing this card, and I'll have to go through their deck, find the card, and then put it on the table so that the audience watching can see exactly what's going on. It's a lot of extra work, but it was definitely worth it to play games, because I use online tools like Board Game Arena, Tabletop Simulator, and things like that, which are great, but you can't beat the physical aspect of the game. For certain games, anyway. Obviously, if you've got If you've got a game with like hidden cards or anything like that, you can't really do
Yeah.
that. So
It's
that was
funny you
a
should
that was a
mention
big
that.
thing. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny you should mention that, because the physical game on the table also contributes to the pleasure of watching the playthrough, not
Yeah.
just you doing it. I will prefer 100 times to watch a playthrough that has the physical game on the table, even if it is with remote players like what you were doing, rather than, a tabletop simulator or board game arena playthrough.
Yeah, and I know there's a few channels, Rado in particular, who doesn't do any playthroughs using Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia because his audience have said, we don't like watching these. Now, I'm not as strict. I do still use that for some of them where it is convenient. I've got one coming up this Friday, for example, which we'll talk about later on, which we've agreed is going to be using Tabletop Simulator rather than the physical game. But in the second half of last year, without focusing too much on the negative, lots of things started going wrong in my life, and I started feeling a little bit overwhelmed with everything. So I made the decision and the announcement in October. I think it was just after I got back from Essen, maybe a couple of weeks after I got back from Essen, that I sort of announced that I'm retiring, in quotes.
Retirement 2.0.
From my role as a rulebook writer and editor. So one of my primary roles in the industry is as a rulebook writer and editor, and I've done lots of rulebooks over the years, and I've done some very, very big rulebooks for some big publishers, and it is a big part of my income. However, it's actually been causing me a lot of problems with mainly stress related, and some of this is within my control, and some of this is outside of my control. And one of the problems that I have is a lot of these big rulebook projects end up growing out of, everything that I thought they were going to be. They ended up growing.
So the scope just balloons
the scope
out
of them, or there were delays in the project and everything else. And it's like any job. But ultimately, I'm here trying to do something whilst I'm also working on 4 rulebook projects that should have been wrapped up a month ago, but weren't wrapped up. And it's one of those things that I decided I'm good at this and I kind of enjoy doing it, but I've allowed myself to end up doing too much of it, and it just got all a bit too much. So I came back from Essen and I had a good think about it, and I thought, do I want to carry on doing this or not? And I decided, no, I'm not gonna carry on doing this. So the big change for me for this year moving forward is that I'm no longer officially a rulebook writer or editor, and I'm focusing more on the channel. So there's going to be, my day job is not just the rulebook writing, because I do the tutorial videos as well, but a lot of the day job has now gone, and people are like, well, what are you going to do with your time? And the thing is, I would often spend about 60, 70 hours a week doing work-related stuff, which is too much. Now, not all of that was paid for. Probably half of that is paid for, and the other half is thanks to the support of the Patreon, which, for me, I treat the Patreon as if it were a job. People are contributing to my Patreon, therefore I produce content in order to do that.
You work
now,
for
I don't
them.
feel... Yeah, I work for them, but I don't feel the pressure. I don't feel, they've given me this much money a month, I must do this content. I'm doing the content because I enjoy doing the content mostly. But so having a lot more time not doing the rulebook work doesn't mean I'm going to automatically fill it with other stuff. It means hopefully I'll cut my working hours down to maybe 40 or 50 a week rather than the 60 or 70, and then start to get a little bit more control back in my life. That's the plan anyway. So it's kind of a big announcement. However, we are now in the second week of January, and I'm still working on Frostpunk, ISS Vanguard, and Batman Gotham City Chronicles because they're still going on. Now, all 3 of them should be done by the end of this month, but anybody who thinks that I'm lying around in a jacuzzi eating strawberries and cream is like, no. Maybe February, but not this month.
So which is the last game that you'll be working on?
Probably ISS Vanguard. Frostpunk is imminently about to go to the printers. We have another new version of the files this weekend, And once we've done the comments on those files and it's finished, then
Yep.
that is pretty much done.
Nice.
Batman Gotham City Chronicles is at the point where we are dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Mhm.
ISS Vanguard is mostly written, but it's probably got about another couple of weeks left on it to go. So yeah, that'll probably be the last one. And
Oh, that's exciting.
although I've sort of stepped back from rulebook writing, I have agreed to do Vital Lacerda's next game. So at some point in the summer, I will, put my rulebook writing hat on again, and I'm going to do Vital's game this year. And that's going to be a test for me, because if I do it and I go, oh my God, now I understand why I gave this up. This is awful. This is terrible. I'm really stressed out again. Then that will be the last one that I do. Or it might just be that I do one rule book a year, and I do Vital's rule book, and that's the only one that I do. So we'll see how it goes.
Is that going to be the next big game he's working on, or is it Bot Factory?
No, Bot Factory is done.
Bot Factory's done.
Bot Factory, the game design and the game development is done. The rulebook is done for it. His next big game, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say about it. I think it has now been announced.
Everything, I'm pretty sure.
I think it's been announced what it's called and what the theme of it is.
Inventions, it's a civilization game.
Okay.
Which I've been talking to him about for about 4 or 5 years. We've been talking for a long time. And it was like, oh, do you want to do a civilization game? You should do a civilization game, Vital. And he's like, but I don't want war. One of his big things is I don't want conflict, I don't want battles, I don't want fighting in any of my games. And like it or not, that is an aspect of civilization-style games, because that's the way the world works. So he eventually found a way of doing a civilization-style game, but focused on the technological achievements and inventions, I think, rather than the actual conflict. So
tell me, Paul, because I really enjoyed listening to the story and how you got into rulebook writing. And is this going to be something where you're going to be out of the game and you'll come across a rulebook for a game and be like, oh, maybe if I just email them and I can tell them I can fix this.
I'll tell you what, it's so hard. Well, the thing is, so I'll be honest here, I've given up my work as a rulebook writer and editor, but I'm still offering rulebook consultancy. And this last week, I have done my first rulebook consultancy job of this year. Pearl Games have got a new game coming out called Time of Empires. There's very little about it on BGG at the moment. In fact, if I searched for it, I found very, very little about it. But they contacted me. I've done some work with Pearl Games before, and they contacted me and they said, we'd like you to edit this rulebook. And I said, well, I'm not doing rulebook editing anymore, but I am offering rulebook consultancy. And basically what that means is they send me a prototype of the game, they send me the current rulebook, and I spend a whole day trying to learn how to play the game from the rulebook. And this is all done via a live video, which is to them only, where I'm reading through the rulebook saying, I think that bit should be here, and you've got this here, and this here. Yeah. So it's basically 3 hours of rulebook feedback while I'm reading through the rulebook, trying to learn how to play, saying, oh, this was a bit confusing, and I was unsure about this. And Martin from Pearl Games was watching live. So this was done on Tuesday of this week. It was me learning how to play the game here, with Martin watching live, him making loads and loads of notes while I was doing it. And then in the afternoon, 2 friends came over, and we actually tried playing the game after I'd learned how to play in the morning. And again, Martin was watching this live, because it's only, you can read through a rule book, and you can read through it 3 or 4 times, and you think, right, I've got this, I know it, I know how to play. And then you start playing, and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He's moving through an area, and there's what's that? Oh, it's not covered in the rulebook. Ah, right. I hadn't realised that. Thankfully, this rulebook was sort of 80% okay, but there were definitely a few things that happened in the playthrough in the afternoon which weren't covered in the rulebook, and we highlighted them. So the reason why this is different from rulebook editing is I have about an hour's more work to do on it, where I write up, hi, Martin, hope you enjoyed the playthroughs, hope they were useful, etc., etc. As discussed in the video, the main points of feedback for you are this, this, and this. Off you go. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then it's done. And I've recommended that they now hire a rulebook editor and send them the links to the video. So if you're watching this and you're a rulebook editor, you might have somebody from Pearl Games contact you and say, could you edit our rulebook? And here's 3 hours of verbal feedback from Paul Grogan about what needs to be done. Or they might decide to do it themselves. But the point is, the difference for me is that job is done. It isn't going to drag on for another 2 months. It's done, finished, signed off, gone, and I can mentally forget about that game and move on to the next projects.
Yeah,
So,
you don't own the whole process of doing it, finishing the rulebook and all of that. Which
but what you were touching on earlier on, it's actually quite difficult for me because I've spent 7 years saying, right, I've done that. And now I will edit the rulebook and I will fix all of those things that I mentioned. Now I'm having to sort of say, no, here's what you need to do. And then
go find
how
someone
you
to
do
do
that
it.
is completely up to you. But the other thing that I also want to do a little bit more of this year, if it's needed, is fixing problems in first printings of rulebooks. Because I really enjoy doing that. And it's actually quite easy work that doesn't take that long. So, for example, I played Old Tree for the first time a couple of weeks ago. The rulebook is okay. For me, there's way too much front loading of information, but there were a few errors, typos, and inconsistencies in the rulebook. I've already read through that rulebook. It would take me 2 hours of work to basically write to them and say, if you're going to do another printing of the game, here's all of the problems you need to fix.
Yeah, okay.
And then it's done. And again, it's just, I go through BGG, I look at all of the questions that have been asked, I see the same question being asked multiple times, and I work out how they can fix that in the next printing of the rulebook so that it's clearer and other people don't have the same problem. And I really like doing that. And as I say, it's maybe a few hours of work. And from a publisher's point of view, they're like, okay, so our second printing of the rulebook is now better than the first one, and it's improving. So I'll still be involved in rulebooks in some respect. I just won't be doing the bulk of the work.
Yeah. So moving forward, it's all about the channel, hey?
Yeah. Which, to be fair, is the part that I enjoy the most. It's still a lot of it is still work, and even all of the playthroughs that I do that are not commissioned, which is at least 50% of the stuff on the channel, I still take seriously because, as I say, the Patreon campaign funds that. Therefore, I want to produce, good content. So I'm always trying to improve things. I'm always trying to make sure everything is as good as it can be. The Polis ones that Def you've watched recently,
this morning
did that on Friday night. That wasn't sponsored. So I took the whole day off work to basically learn how to play, do a practice playthrough and everything else. Then spent an hour setting up the studio, setting up all the camera angles and everything else in order to try and do the best video I could for the game. But it wasn't commissioned by the publisher. So it's funded through Patreon, but I still take it seriously.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been meaning to ask you. I know you've touched on this on your latest update, but people see the final product in the videos, right? They see you with the game set up, maybe a couple of people on the table, off we go. Maybe in some cases you do a bit of setup or whatever else, but they don't see the whole preparation before that, which includes stuff you would have to do to play the game anyway, as in learning the game and setting it up. But it also includes a whole bunch of shenanigans about setup, audio, video, lights, cameras, people's positions, maybe secondary cameras that you have sometimes. How much is that additional work, That must be significant, right?
It is significant. It is less now because I've done it so many times. But on Friday, for Polis, it was interesting because we actually had a meeting at a hotel after Vicky had finished work. So it was the logistical nightmare of Friday was harder than a Vital Lacerda game. The car was in for an MOT. Vicky finished work at 5. I had to pick her up. I had to go and get the car. Obviously, if it passed its MOT, pick up the car, then go and get Vicky from work, then drive to a hotel to have a meeting about my next convention, then come back, then have food, then set up the studio, all in time for people coming round. And we just about got it done. But the only way we did get it done is Vicky came up here and helped me set up the studio. Because although I have the cameras on the other players, the camera right now, for example, is right ahead of me. on the playthrough on Friday night, that is the camera which was in the ceiling, and I had 2 other cameras in different angles. So every single time, it isn't like I just leave the camera set up in the same position every time.
Yeah.
They all need moving around and they all need setting up. And with Vicky helping me, it was really good because I was basically, I sit here and she's there and she's moving it around, and then I ask her to sit there and I move this camera, and then I ask her to move to there because there's going to be 2 people there, or I'll get one of my little stuffed animals and I'll sit it there and I'll set the cameras up. So it does take quite a bit of time, but because I've done it a lot now, it's relatively smooth. And then you've got the software set up. You've got to move everything around, you've got to work out which camera angles and everything else. And like you said, and I did touch on this on the latest video log, is there was one comment that I got from somebody on YouTube that basically said, I think I'd done a video like Polis where I said, if you like the content that I create and you want to support the channel and help make these videos possible, you can do so by supporting me at patreon.com/gaming rules. And this guy replied to me and he said, why should I pay you money when all you're doing is playing games with friends? You already make loads of money from advertising, so it's just greedy to ask for more. Now, and like I said on the video log, some people could just dismiss that as a trollish comment.
Sure.
And it was a bit of a trollish comment, but the guy actually had a reasonable question. He's saying, well, hang on a minute. If all I'm doing is playing games with friends and I'm saying, oh, give me money so I can carry on playing games with friends, I can see where he's coming from.
Sure.
But, Def, as you say, I've spent an hour a day reading through the rulebook of Polis. I took off the morning to set everything up. I took the afternoon off to invite a friend round to actually play a practice game. So there was probably about 8 or 9 hours of work that went into the preparation, plus the 3 hours of the video. So that's 12 hours of work. And yeah, I was playing games with friends, but it's a lot more stressful and a lot more work to do a live stream than just playing games with friends.
100%.
Absolutely.
And the other thing as well is that what he didn't know is that every single penny of my YouTube advertising goes to charity. So I make no money whatsoever from my YouTube advertising. In fact, we actually got the figures for last year, and this is a big thank you to everybody who has watched my videos in 2021. We raised £4,000 for charity.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
That's a lot of money. And people are like, Paul, you're crazy. You could have taken that money yourself and that could have been extra money for you. And I'm like, yeah, but my life choices are my own. And I decided that if I'm going to turn on advertising on YouTube, which I personally hate, but if I'm going to turn it on, I'm going to give it all to charity. And I did. And it amounted to £4,000 last year. So yeah, big thank you to everybody who watches the videos because you're helping make that happen.
So I have to ask, do you have a specific charity that you give the money to?
So the way it works is that we actually, as part of the Patreon campaign, I have a Slack channel. And occasionally on the Slack channel, maybe once every couple of months, we'll post and we'll say, please can you give suggestions for a charity that we can donate to? And Vicky, my partner, she handles all of this. So basically people post a list and say, I think you should give money to this people, this people, this people, this people. Right. Some of them for reasons like if they've recently lost a family member due to, an illness or something like that. And then Vicky has a list. And then whenever the monthly money comes in from Google, she goes to the list and then we make the payment. So yeah, it's Patreon supporters on the Slack channel get to suggest which charities we give money to, which is nice because if I was a Patreon supporter of myself, I would appreciate that. So I think it's just one of those things to do that they make suggestions about where the money goes.
That's fantastic.
Nice. So with the video, your focus now going to be more on the channel. What content have you made to date or maybe are going to do that you're most passionate and excited for?
Oof, everything. I get excited about everything. And there isn't going to be any new type of content coming to the channel. It's just going to be more of
sure.
what we've already seen. So more playthroughs, more solo playthroughs, because I'll have more time during the day. and I'm excited about a lot of it. Like, I'm a gamer. First and foremost, I'm a gamer, and I still get excited and I still get passionate about these games when I'm covering them. And I think it's clear from people watching the videos, even when I don't give my opinion on a game, whether I'm enjoying it or not. I'm not a good actor. I can't lie. I don't put on a fake pretend for the camera and say this game is really good. I think it's clear when I've enjoyed a game. But also, I enjoy a lot of games. I'm not somebody who raves about every single game, but I do enjoy a lot of different games. So
there was a lot of excitement when you unpacked that box behind your right shoulder the other day.
This one,
no, yeah,
yeah. I mean, Perseverance is a game which I've been commissioned to create the how to play videos for. Putting that aside, I'm a big fan of Mind Clash games. I backed their first ever game that they came out with. Their games are fantastic. I really love their games as a gamer. And Perseverance is a game that I got to play when it was being developed, and I was like, this is brilliant. This is really, really good. Both the combination of the theme, the concept, the choices that you have to make in the game. So like a lot of people who've backed Perseverance, I am on that same. This is one of my most anticipated games of this year.
Yeah.
And not because I've managed to get a copy 2 months early. It's because I'm looking forward to playing it. And I've played it on Thursday. And there's a games weekend next weekend happening at a friend's house. He's got like 6 or 7 people coming round. And I posted on the group this morning and said, I've got Perseverance. I'd really like to play it. But I don't want to bring a massive heavy box down if nobody else is interested. And as of about an hour ago, 2 people have replied and said, yeah, I'll play that. So I'm already looking forward to playing it again. Yeah, so and that's the thing. And that, I am super excited about that game. And I played it on Thursday and I can't wait to play it again. But on the flip side, I've also been commissioned to create the how to play video for the game. And I think it's the people who know me know that I'm not faking my excitement about it because I'm really, really, really looking forward to. But yeah, creating the how to play video is going to take me probably about 6 or 8 weeks of time because I won't be on it full time. I will still be doing I've still got some of the other stuff. So I've still got I've got 3 other playthrough videos coming next week, which are going to get in the way of me filming that video. So I reckon I can probably spend 50 to 60% of my working hours working on that, and then the rest of the time will be the other Patreon related stuff. Otherwise, the channel goes quiet for 6 weeks and I don't do anything. And it's like, I don't want that. So I'm planning a game of Ark Nova on Tuesday afternoon with Tom Heath from Slicker Drips and Luke Hector from The Broken Meeple, just because the 3 of us want to play Ark Nova.
Yeah.
So, it'll be more content for the channel. But I've already covered Ark Nova 4 or 5 times on the channel, but once more can't hurt.
I was just about to announce that. I was about to say something about that, Paul, because that's something that I think you're the only person that I know in board game content creation that does that. Where, like, for example, I've been learning Tabanusi of late. And you've got the tutorial and playthrough, then you've got a solo playthrough, then you've got a 3-player playthrough. And it's clear that you want to show more and more of it, and you're happy to play. A lot of people will just put one tutorial and playthrough up of each game where you're just like, done. You know what, I'm playing this again. Let's record it and put it up there. And yeah, I think that's fantastic.
And that first one was sponsored. Board and Dice sponsored that first playthrough of the game. But the one that I did last week, that wasn't sponsored. That was just because I played the game. I really enjoyed the game, but I played it at 2-player and I wanted to experience it at 3-player. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play it again. And if I get 4 people round and Tabanusi hits the table, and this goes back to a question I think somebody asked in my last live Q&A is about how I choose what content goes on the channel. And they were a relatively new subscriber. So they asked the question. They said, look, is every piece of content you put on your channel sponsored? And I'm like, right, first of all, no, it's not. And they said, so how do you decide which other content goes on your channel? And one of the important questions they asked was, would you cover a game on your channel because you want to play it, even though you know it's not a popular game and it's not going to get many views? And I'm like, yes, I would. Because if I want to cover the game, I want to cover the game. And ever since I played Tabanusi 2-player, I'm like, I want to play this at 3. So
Yeah.
when Stephen and Paul came round and we did Time of Empires in the afternoon, I bought them dinner, obviously because they'd helped me do the work-related thing in the afternoon. And then I was like, well, 3 people, let's play Tabanusi. And I think it's very difficult as a content creator to go back and play something again when there's always something new to play.
Yeah.
But I want to do that. I don't want to be somebody who plays it once, moves on, and then it goes on the shelf and it gets forgotten about. I don't want to do that. I can't do that with every game. Right now I'd like to play Polis. And part of me today is thinking, well, I've got 25 house jobs that need to be done. Or I could call Rob and say to Vicky, sorry, Vicky, I've got to play Polis again. It's a religious requirement or something like that. Because
he's going to want a rematch.
Yeah, definitely.
So what time is Rob coming around?
I think he's coming around at 2, but don't tell anybody. Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty obvious, Paul, that the passion and love for the games comes out in the content that you make. It's one of the reasons why I love watching the stuff that you do. But I think you've mentioned before that you did something last January, which I kind of stuck with me. I don't know why, but you kind of decided to take a couple of weeks or a few weeks.
I took the month of January off, yeah.
Yeah, to dive into a couple of games, and that's when you recorded those few sessions of Too Many Bones, just running through a few different games.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's another game that Jules and I sort of fell in love with, and probably sits within the higher end of your weight tolerance. But I'm wondering if you've gone through much of the content for Cloudspire.
Not as much as I wanted to. Yeah. I would have loved to have done with Cloudspire what I did for Too Many Bones last year, because every time I play it, I think this is fantastic. This is just... I mean, Cloudspire was my favourite game of the year that it came out, 2019, I think.
Yep.
And there's no other game like Cloudspire. I mean, if you described Cloudspire to me, it's a kind of lane-based sort of League of Legends style tower defense game, I'm like, not interested at all.
Yeah.
However, I then started playing it and I was like, this is unlike anything I've actually ever got in my collection. It completely stands alone, and it is so tactical and it's so clever, but it has a high learning curve, and the first time you play it, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. And I remember the first time I played it, I got a certain point of the way through, and then I just realised I was getting the campfire rules completely wrong. So I just went, it's not even worth carrying on. I'll scrap that and start again. And then I played I played another game, and I went, oh, hang on a minute, I'm rolling dice for attacks for the units, which you don't do. So forget that. I mean, that was a stupid mistake, but I'm not the only one that's made that mistake.
Yeah.
And then I played it sort of 2 or 3 times, and eventually it sort of clicked. Now, I'm not saying that you play every game perfectly, because the way that the minions' movement work is very precise and clever. But no, I'd look. Cloudspire is on the possible list for this year as to doing something similar to what I did with Too Many Bones, which is I'm going to do this once a month. But I've had a lot of Too Many Bones fans saying, Paul, when are you getting back to Too Many Bones?
Yeah.
And it's like... And the reason I took the January 2021 off work, and that wasn't retirement, that was literally, I'm taking a month off work. That came from frustration. That came from complete frustration in September, October of 2019, that I've got Maracaibo, fantastic game. It's got a campaign I don't have time to play. Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth, absolutely love it. I've only played 2 chapters out of like 14 or something. Too Many Bones, great game, I just don't have time to play it. So I decided, as Def mentioned, January 2021, I went, right, I'm taking the month off work, and I am going to start ticking off some of those things that are just bugging me because I don't have time to play them. And I did. And I did no commissioned work at all for a month. And in some respects, it was a great thing, because I got to the end of 2021 having ticked those things off the list. I didn't get them finished in January. They were both still going on in April because they were both quite long. But I'm really happy that I did them. and I ticked them off the list, and I'm very happy about that. But in February, I went, oh dear, all that work I've been putting off that I should have been doing, suddenly I've now got... Because my publishers, my clients are like, okay, Paul, we understand you need to take a month off work. However, we've got this game that needs to be finished. And when you're going to do it? So I put a lot of pressure onto myself for February. But yeah, I'm really happy I did that. And hopefully this year, once these rule books are gone away, I can get back to doing more stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll see how things are. I've actually made I've got Google Sheets for everything in my life, and I've got a Google Sheet of everything that I want to cover on the channel with a priority number. And every time a new game arrives, or anytime I think about something that I think, oh yeah, I'd like to cover that on the channel, it gets added to the list. And that has actually been therapeutic for me, because I started feeling, again, November time, December time, I started feeling overwhelmed. Oh, I want to do this on the channel. I want to do this. And whilst I was having all of these, exciting thoughts about, right, when I'm not doing rulebooks anymore, I'll be able to do this, and I'll be able to do this. And suddenly I was getting overwhelmed by the amount of thoughts that I had of what I could cover on the channel. So I've written everything down on a big list, and at least it's all there in front of me, and I can start ticking things off.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to see. Hopefully, you can do some Cloud Spire content. I was literally playing the solo missions for the Grige this afternoon after a couple of months of not touching it, and it was a bit rough. Like, I'd forgotten. I was feeling rusty, and I got absolutely stomped the first game. Second one, I realized I'd made a few mistakes, and that altered everything. Had to scrap that. And third time I got it, it's like, wow. If you put that one down, you've really got to spend a game to pick it back up.
You do, absolutely. Yeah. The Grige is not something that I've explored yet. I've only been sticking with the base 4. But this is one of the areas where I actually have... it's a big advantage to doing live streams, because I can guarantee you now, the next time I play Cloud Spire, I will make a rules mistake. And there will be somebody in the chat going, Paul, that doesn't... Oh, right. It's fantastic. So, yeah, anybody who watches any of my live videos and points out something that we get wrong during the live playthrough, it's brilliant. And the other good thing, so I recommend getting yourself a camera, getting a tripod, and sending it to YouTube for 2 reasons. The first one is somebody might watch it and point out what you're doing wrong. And for anybody who watched the Polis live playthrough on Friday, there were at least 2 occasions during the game where one of us went, have we had 2 actions or have we had 1 action? Or did I do this or did I do this? So literally, I moved my mouse, I went to the video, I rewound it, I watched it back, and I went... replay. We got the replay. And with somebody whose memory is as bad as mine, that's essential. It was fantastic. So yeah, being able to literally rewind time and see what you've done in the current game.
Yeah.
I recommend everybody gets a YouTube channel, even if you don't broadcast it to anybody other than yourself. Just literally as a memory aid. It's been really great. But the live interaction from people helping out with rules is one thing.
Yes.
The live interaction just from people being there and saying hello and enjoying the playthrough gives... It's a feeling which I can't describe, because if you've never done it, you won't know what it is. But it's very rewarding to be sat here playing games with friends, with people watching who are genuinely enjoying the playthrough and commenting and everything else. And I'm not saying people are going, oh, Paul, you're fantastic. Nobody says that in my chat.
Yeah.
It's clear that they are they're really involved in the game and they're really watching along. And that's really good.
Out of curiosity, have you played Three Sisters yet, Paul?
I haven't, no.
Because I've just...
Why did I hear about that game?
Well, Mitch has...
Somebody told me about it this week.
If you've listened to our podcast.
No.
The reason I thought I'd bring it up is because it's got a little section called the journal, which is for you to check off when, to remind yourself of something. So you get a bunch of free actions throughout the game. So you might put a little check mark there to say, I've got a free action coming up. And I would like YouTube, for when I play that game, to go back and check whether I crossed off that from the journal. So it's there to remind you, but then I forget whether I've actually done it or whether So, I see your point.
I'm glad it's not just me with terrible memory. So, I mean, I remember in the Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth playthroughs, it's very simple. Your character has 2 actions. And I kept forgetting whether I'd taken those 2 actions. So I started using little counters halfway through the playthrough series. I went, right, I fixed this. I'm going to use these little 2 counters. And when I've taken an action, I'm going to take a counter away. Except I'd take the action and forget to take the counter away. And then I'm like, so have I taken 1 action or 2? And it's like...
Rewind.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, rewind. Yeah.
So, in talking about obviously this big change of moving away from doing those rulebook edits and writings, presumably now you're in your retirement 2.0, you'll have a bit more free time. Is there anything outside of board games in terms of hobbies that you want to pick up again, or something new you want to try?
Yeah, probably not something new, because there are things that I enjoy that I don't have enough time to do.
Mm-hmm.
There is a daytime thing called geocaching, which
nice.
it's not really possible for me to do that during the day because Vicky's at work most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But Vicky only works 4 days a week. Vicky got a new job 3 weeks before lockdown. So 3 weeks before lockdown started, she got a new job, and we discussed our personal situation, and we decided that Vicky wanted to go a bit part-time. So that she has Wednesdays off. And the plan was that we can do the Wednesday, can be doing all of the gaming rules, because she's my accountant as well. We can spend the Wednesday doing all of the gaming rules admin that we have tended to leave to the weekend, which is why we lose our weekends, because we're having to do all of the boring company invoicing, admin, and everything else. So the plan was she would go to 4 days a week, and we'd use the Wednesdays to do the admin so that we were free at the weekends, with a longer term plan of once we've got everything, once I've cut down my workload and everything's a bit more smoother, that we could actually possibly take Wednesday afternoons off. But geocaching is something that we both enjoy. And for those people, I mean, you all nodded and said yes, but for anybody watching who doesn't know what geocaching is, it's a global thing where basically there are these hidden, it's like a treasure hunt. There are these hidden things all over the world, millions of them. And what you do is you get given a set of GPS coordinates, and you just got to go and find it. And it can be anything from a tiny little thing hidden in the bottom of a tree or something. There was one of them that we found that was like this big box behind a tree in a motorway service station. But essentially, it gives you a reason to go out, and you follow a route, and you find these little geocaches, and it's purely for fun. And it's something that we both enjoy doing, and we don't get time to do enough of it as we want to. So that's nice. One thing outside. And do you all do geocaching then?
Yeah,
a little bit.
My wife and I started doing it last year, actually, and it was exactly that. We kind of did it as a way to sort of force ourselves to go for a walk. But what we actually ended up doing was, whenever we went anywhere, we would get the phone out and just go, I wonder if there's anything around. There's one over here. Let's go and explore. And except just like in board games, I lose to her. Like, I know it's not a competitive thing, but she finds them first every time. And I'm like, we're looking at the same coordinates. I don't understand. It's like, it's over here. I'm like, thanks, son.
Yeah. So. And some of these geocaches have been great. Some of them are literally just, you go to the coordinates, you're looking around, you see a road sign, which is a very common place that things are hidden, and you think, we've done dozens of like this. You look around the road sign, and there's like a plastic snail with a magnetic strip attached to the back of the road sign, and you think, there it is, we found it, great. And then there's other ones which are really clever, and one of the best ones we ever did was in Exeter, and we got these coordinates, and it was like it was a church, not one of these big old style churches, like a modern church, it was just a building in a row of buildings, but it was a church. And this was a Saturday afternoon, so it's closed, nobody's there, but the coordinates are pointing to somewhere inside the church ground. So we're like, well, can we go in? So we went through the gate, and we're in the church grounds, and we're down this small alleyway down by the side of the church, and we think, well, the coordinates are kind of pointing to here. And we kind of felt, should we be here or not? And then I was looking at the side of the church, and I was like, and you got the side of a building, you got the drain pipes coming out and everything else. And I was like, there's a pipe there that isn't going anywhere. And it was an actual,
Oh,
and it looked just like a drain pipe, but it was coming out and going nowhere.
That
And
is
I was
so
like,
clever.
that's odd. So we unscrewed the top of it, and looking at the top, there was a magnet. And I was like, okay. And this pipe was vertical. So I thought, I wonder if there's something at the bottom of the pipe. So I got this magnet, put it at the bottom of the pipe, and as it was, that somebody had put a cork with a magnet with the geocache attached to it, and what you had to do is you had to drag it out of the pipe, get it out the top. This is like 4 years ago, but I remember it because both of us liked treasure hunts, puzzles, and everything else. And it was just the fact that somebody had gone to the extent of attaching a false drain pipe to the side of a building was just brilliant. So
and you want to do that. The
the
person who set that up must laugh every time someone posts. Couldn't find it, doesn't exist, it's been moved.
Exactly.
Like, no, bet you it's still there.
Yeah. As far as hobbies go inside the house, I like painting. I like which is related to board games because I like painting miniatures or game components or anything. And I never sit down and just paint. I always do it whilst watching TV. There's a lot of TV shows that we simply haven't had time to watch. So I'm planning over the next X number of years to hopefully catch up on some of the TV shows that we've never seen. With some notable examples of Breaking Bad, apparently one of the best TV shows ever made.
Agreed.
We've never seen it.
Yes.
We've spent 5 years saying we need to watch this. The Expanse sounds exactly like the kind of show that I would love and not had time to watch it. I'm a huge Marvel fan, and I've not watched any of the TV series yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How can I be a Marvel fan having never watched any of them? But this is the thing, and I'm hoping, and the reason why we haven't had time to watch this is going back last year and the year before, I was tending to work probably 2 or 3 evenings a week and then do playthroughs on 2 or 3 evenings a week, which means free time at home is actually very, very little. And I'm hoping that bringing some of the evening work forward or doing less of it means that we'll have more time for me to paint more miniatures and get a lot more TV shows watched. Because there's so many TV shows coming out now. If we thought it was impossible to keep up with them 2 years ago, now it's just with Disney Plus and everything else, it's just
it's ridiculous.
Just make sure you add Ted Lasso to your list. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, we might finish the initial discussion up there. We could just keep going for an hour and a half.
For sure.
Just do that. We probably should sizzle some games. So this one's been mentioned a few times already. So I'll start with Def. What game are you talking about, Def?
Well, the game that we've been playing mostly the last few days has been a new game which excuse me, I know that Paul has played. I know Steve and Jules, you probably haven't played it yet.
Not yet.
But it's been one of the most hyped games that came out of Essen, and I was really looking forward to play it. It didn't disappoint. We've been having a great time, and that is Ark Nova. And we've had a few 2-player games with it. Paul, I've watched your solo playthrough. It seems quite straightforward and pretty good and easy, to follow through. But I haven't played it yet. But so Ark Nova is a game that essentially, I think the designer said that he got some kind of inspiration from terraforming Mars, and since then people have been comparing it to terraforming Mars non-stop, but I just don't see it. I just don't see that, apart from a little bit of connection between the icons and the cards. So essentially you have a mountain of cards that come out, and you get, and you then play, and the cards could be animals that you have to play to your personal zoo, which you build up with different types of enclosures that have different shapes and sizes in your zoo. But you also get some additional cards like sponsor cards that give you money or give you some kind of benefit, and conservation cards that give you conservation points. And it has this interesting, almost like a play chicken end game trigger, where you have 2 markers in 2 different tracks. One is the appeal track of your zoo, and the other one is the conservation track, and they start from opposite sides, and they start moving slowly towards the middle. At some point, they meet. So when they cross, when the first player's markers meet or cross, that triggers the end of the game. But that player that triggers it doesn't get another go. So
okay.
it has a very interesting balance at the end game, which I find quite smart, quite challenging. But we've been having a great time. The game is not short. It takes a bit of time to get through. It's a long game, but we've been enjoying it at 2-player. It's been great.
So it's interesting, Def, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, Paul, because you've played it as well. But Adrian sizzled this on our episode before last, and he was saying that he basically said it's called Terraforming. It might be called Terraforming Zoo. He was very much like it's a Terraforming Mars clone. And I love Terraforming Mars, but I'm not a space fan. So the theme means nothing for me. I just like the game.
Right.
And so when I saw this, I'm like, wow, this will be better because I can get into the theme. And you mentioned that end of game trigger. That reminds me of Rajas of the Ganges, which is another game that I quite like. So I really want to try this one out. But now you're saying the Terraforming Mars theme doesn't come through as much as I'm not saying I won't enjoy it if it doesn't, but that was kind of what was drawing me to the game.
I don't see the connection. I don't know. What do you reckon, Paul?
Well, I like Adrian. I think Adrian's great. But he's wrong. No, the thing is, I can see the connection and I can see why people are comparing it. Because the cards work in a similar way, in that you have this massive stack of them. You won't go through all of them in the game. Every single one is unique. There's a cost to play. There are tags on the card, which is the same as Terraforming Mars. They're not called tags, but they are effectively tags. There are certain requirements to play certain cards, like in Terraforming Mars, and then the cards will have an effect on the game. That's it. That's where the similarity ends. You are not building up a central board. There is not a collaborative condition that triggers the end of the game. There is no drafting of cards. So other than the way that the cards work, there's no similarity really. Some of those cards you are building up a bit of a tableau, but not as much, I don't think, as Terraforming Mars. But it uses the action selection mechanism from Civilization and New Dawn.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
It uses the scoring markers crossing from Rajas of the Ganges, but the gameplay is completely different from Terraforming Mars. I think if you like one, you might like the other. I mean, I love both, but I know people that like Terraforming Mars but don't like Ark Nova, and vice versa. So it's just the big stack of cards and the way that those cards work, really.
Right. Fair enough.
The similarities. So yeah, try it and see what you think.
I do.
In terms of whether the game is thematic or not, I've heard different things. I think just because you've got actual real animals and photos of them doesn't make the game thematic. For me, what makes the game thematic is, does this really feel like you're building up your own zoo? Does it really feel like you're building enclosures and putting animals in enclosures? And do the effects of the animals actually represent what that animal does in real life? Now, to be fair, not knowing that much about zoos, but when I build an enclosure and get a tiger in, I've got a tiger in the zoo, and it brings more people to the zoo, right? But in the game, that card has a particular effect. Like, draw 4 cards from the deck and choose one, or something like this. So it's nice. I really like it. It's in contention for me for one of my games of last year. I don't do my game of the year until 12 months after everybody else has done theirs. So in December 2022, although I might this year wait just until the summer, because it is a little bit silly leaving it a year because I've forgotten everything. But probably around the summer of this year, I will announce what were my favourite games of 2021. And if it isn't Ark Nova will definitely be in the top few. It's just a joy to play. It's really good.
Yeah.
I'm playing it again on Tuesday.
There you go. So yeah, that was what we've been playing. It's good you mentioned the action selection mechanism because I forgot to mention that. So essentially, the way it works is you've got 5 cards with 5 actions, and that's it. And they are under a specific numbered slot. And the way it works is the higher the slot the card is, the most things you can do with that action. So, and when you play that action, it goes back to number 1 and pushes everything up. So it makes you think about what you want to do, but it also avoids players abusing one specific action because they might have some kind of advantage or combo, because it goes back to number 1. It's almost useless. You have to sort of wait until it builds up again. So yeah, that's really clever mechanism. And I actually want to go back and play Civilization and New Dawn now because of this.
Right.
Yeah, nice. Well, I've been playing a game. I'm a big Uwe Rosenberg fan. That's no surprise to people who listen to the podcast. But it's been a while since I played one of his big box games. Well, it's not been a while, I guess. I spoke about Agricola the other week, but I've been playing Hallertau a bit, and it's been a while for that game in particular. I played it a lot when it first came out, and I'm like, this is really great. And then I've put it away, and it wasn't until I was down in Melbourne, and Mike and I got to play it on the last day I was down there. And I remembered why this game is so excellent. And I immediately came back to Brisbane and went to our usual Thursday night game night and taught it again because, like, we talked about theme. I call it the Uwe Rosenberg School of Farming because I love the idea that if you want to get some sheep, then you just get some milk and pour the milk out on the grass, and you'll get some sheep. That's how sheep are born.
That's how it works in the UK anyway. So yeah.
Oh, hang on, I've got a visitor. What's up, buddy? We're recording.
Mum said that I could stay up until you go to bed.
Okay.
Okay.
But
well,
did
if you
she
had that discussion
really?
with Mum, you don't have to tell me. I trust that Mum has got that under control. Okay.
See you, Raf.
See you, buddy.
She's going to bed.
It wasn't the ice cream van; it was a kid.
Well, no, that's
It
right.
was the ice cream man.
I've lost my train of thought. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Uwe Rosenberg School of
Expert level on the box.
To be honest, that was the weirdest choice. I know that Lookout Games do that, where they have the two
They
players,
do that.
but putting expert level on Hallertau, I know you've played it as well, Paul. But it's just not that hard of a game. Like it really. I've got this theory on Uwe Games where his big box games are actually quite simple when you break them down. But his small box games are the big brain crunchers, like the Nova Lunas, and they're the ones where the decisions hurt your brain. In this one, there's so much to do because there's like 13 resources to control, I think, that you can always be doing something. It might not be the right thing, but it's not. You don't have enough time to contemplate the ideal solution. And so what I love, it's essentially a resource management game. That's the most important thing. Sorry.
Hang on. Is that the one that Mike was saying you slaughter a sheep to get a chicken thigh? Hang on.
Yes, there's
that
a
doesn't compute.
So there's a meat token.
No, what happens is, the sheep eats the chicken. But then before it's digested, you kill the sheep and you get the chicken out. I think that's how farming works.
I'm telling you, this is the Uwe Rosenberg School of Farming. So the meat tokens look a lot like a chicken leg. So we were making the joke that you throw milk on the ground, you grow a sheep, then you kill it, you get cowhide and chicken bone, and that's the circle of life.
Yeah.
But yeah, you control all these resources, and it's got essentially what you're doing is you're. Well, I think the theme, and this is loose, but the theme is that you're brewers of beer in the 18th, 19th century, and you're growing barley and hops. But what you're actually trying to do is progress these buildings so that your town center so your town's getting bigger, and that's represented by your town center moving along this board. And that's really cool because the further it moves along, the more access you have to workers, and that number's in your window. So I always liken it to you look out the window of your town center and go, there's more people out there. We should hire some more staff. I really like that. It's kind of a cool little neat touch. And you get these workers, there's action spaces on the board, and it takes a lot for an action to be blocked out, because if you go there, if you're the first person to go there, it just costs you one worker. The second person to go there costs you 2, and the third person to go there costs you 3. So that action is available until 3 people have used it. But of course, you're using more workers, and you only start with 6, so workers are important. But then at the end of each round, depending on the player count, you'll clear out the top row of either 1, 2, or all of the sections, depending on the numbers of players. So it relieves the pressure on those spaces as well throughout the game. So I think that's really cool. But the resource management side of it is what I really enjoy. So you put these fields on your board, and then you'll have you'll get some crops. So there's 4 different types of crops. Let's see how my memory goes. You've got barley, rye, flax, and something else. And what you do is, if you've got one of those resources, you can decrease it by 1 and put an icon on one of your fields. And then in the harvest phase, you'll move it back across to that number of resources. But depending on the level of your field is the amount that you'll create. So if you're trying to get your fields up to level 5, because then you'll create 5 resources when that harvests. But if you leave nothing in your fields, they'll all go up. And when you harvest, they drop down. So you're trying to make sure you're doing it at the right time to get these resources to pay in order to progress your town center. So it all works together. But it's a delight. And it's been a while since I played it. I had it in my, I think it was made like my top 30 or 40 when we did our games of like our top 100 at the start of the end of last year, sorry. But I'm starting to really enjoy this one, maybe a little bit more than what I gave it credit for initially. It's just a nice flowing game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. There's only 6 rounds. There's a possibility of sheep dying of natural causes, so you want to try to avoid that. And I legitimately says that in the rule book. If you leave your sheep on your cards, they will die of natural causes. So you have to be aware of that. And I just love that there's a game about growing crops in order to brew beer. And because it's an Uwe game, there's sheep. It's just got to be animals, which is just delightful. It's a lot of fun. It's not as long as games like Le Havre, which I love, but it's a much longer game than this. This is, 2-player, you could probably punch out a game of this in just over an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
And at 4-player, not a lot longer. So that's Hallertau, big tick again for me, and definitely not expert level. Don't let that scare you away from this game.
So my experience with this game has been the opposite of yours.
Yeah, right.
But this game has actually been talked about a number of times over the last few months with friends of mine who have said, oh, really, really enjoying Hallertau. So my experience with Hallertau, and I remember being super excited when it arrived, and I did 3 playthroughs on the channel or something like that. I remember playing it. But after my 3rd game, I was like, or maybe even 3rd or 4th game, I was like, well, this is just feeling very similar. Because I think one of the objectives in the game, which can get you a lot of points, is moving that town centre to the right. And I think in my 1st or 2nd game, I managed to move it all the way to the right. And it felt like that's an achievement. And then it was just down to the cards. And the cards, I don't know, there was an element for me, and I might be wrong on this, but this was the feeling that I had, is that the cards were determining my strategy. So I'd drawn a certain number of cards, and the cards were saying, oh, if you do this, get this, and if you do this, get this. So that's what I tried to do. It was compared to Feast for Odin, where all my choices are my own, what I want to do. Yeah. I felt that in Hallertau, I was being forced down a particular path. Now, it's been a long time since I played it, and so many people have been trying to persuade me to give it another go. Because I did enjoy it, I just didn't enjoy it. If given the choice of Hallertau or Feast for Odin, I will always play Feast for Odin. But I do need to get back to Hallertau and give it another chance. So.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I wouldn't put it in Feast for Odin category, even though they're both big box Uwe games. But Feast for Odin is a work of art. But I think that the thing for me was that it was just a good time. Like it might not be the most technically sound game of all, but I just felt like it's an enjoyable, shorter game, shorter resource management game, and I just quite appreciate. And the cards, I really like how the cards work, where some of them, the more powerful cards, require you to pay resources in order to play them, but some of the cards are just like, if you have this, then you get this. which
Yeah.
which is good too. So it doesn't ruin your engine just so you can get a benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 8 different. Well, there's 2 types of cards from memory, and
Yeah.
then there's 4 different decks for each type of card, and you don't mix and match, do you?
No, it's the other way around. There's 4 decks of cards, and there's
Right.
2 different types of farm decks they interchange, so you get a different feel. And then there's 4 different types of the gate decks.
Yeah.
So you could definitely change it up and have a different experience based on the cards that you choose to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was Hallertau. It's I'm always keen to play Uwe games, but it's been a really good resurgence over the last couple of weeks.
Awesome.
What about you, Jules?
All right, so for me, I'm going to sizzle a game that was my oath a few episodes ago, and that's Mysthea.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, so this is a big game. As I mentioned previously, it was a Kickstarter from 4 or 5 years ago. It's hard to get here, but oh man, I got to play a full game at our Melbourne game day a couple of weekends ago at 3 players. And it was just amazing. This is a game so up my alley. It was one of the most enjoyable games I've played in a long time, probably since I picked up Cloudspire and just dove headfirst into that. Yeah. So this is a big game. The box absolutely lies in your face about how long it takes. It's longer.
It's long, isn't it? Yeah, I've heard it's long.
It is a long game. It's probably, I'd say, an hour per player.
Yeah. Okay.
And look, I don't mind a long game. I love long games. So this is so up my alley. But to give a description of the game, it does have a lot of things that are similar to Blood Rage. So that's already a tick for me. I quite enjoy Blood Rage. It's a game that has area control. It has tableau building and deck building as well. So essentially what you're doing is you have a hero that you act as, and you'll deploy golems and troops, and you're trying to control these different regions on the board. And there's 3 ages, so it's the same as Blood Rage, and there's a deck of cards for each of those ages, and the cards get more and more crazy and powerful as you go through those ages. So it has that similarity as well. Essentially, all you're doing is you're trying to move around these 5 floating islands, and you're trying to deploy troops and position them to control areas at different points in the game to score victory points. Now, there's scoring that you can do through the game. So there's cards that allow you to score points if you control certain areas from the deck that you're building, but the most of your points are scored at the end of each age, where you go through and you see which areas are in control. So the really cool things about this game is the way that each age works. There's a deck of cards that come out one at a time, and the decks actually face up. So you flip a card, or push a card out, and you see the next one that's coming. So it's always revealed information of what is coming. And each of those cards represent one of the different terrain types or regions in the game. And the round will end once all 5 of the region cards have come out. And the other cards in that deck can be monsters, which everyone fights, and I'll get to that. And on this, as the cards come out, there's a row, and under each of the slots in the row is victory points. So it might have, the first one is the mountain region, and it's in the number 2 victory point slot. So at the end of the age, for every person that controls a mountain region will get 2 victory points, and then it scales all the way up to 10 victory points. It can get that far in the later ages, but not as much in the first one. So once you've gone through an age, that deck gets reshuffled, and then you repeat it. So all of a sudden, the mountains that were worth 2 points in the first era might actually be an 8-point area for the second era, and suddenly you have to reposition all your dudes to try and claim those higher value positions. That sounds pretty simple, but movement and repositioning in this game is tight. Moving things around is very difficult. So the way it works is those islands will each have 3 areas, and you can only move to adjacent islands from same type to same type. So you can't just go, I'm going from this island to this island. you have to move from a mountain region on one island to a mountain region on an adjacent island. But the one on your left might not have a mountain region, so you might have to hop into the lakes region to then go to a lakes region on the left-hand side. Not only that, it has one of the coolest, I don't even know what you call this mechanic. One of the mechanisms in the game is you have this artifact that you can use twice, maybe more in a round if you have particular cards. That artifact can be used to battle. There's not a lot of battling in this game. It's very timed and tactical. So you have to be careful about when you flip that artifact because you only get one free reset. Or you can use that artifact to do what's called an attunement. All it is you grab the island that your hero is on, you push it into the middle of the board, and I should have said the islands are arranged in a circle, and then you can choose the new position for that island and all of the rest of them shift out of the way. So you redistribute the whole board and all the connecting regions on the board, and it absolutely changes things every single time. And you get a bonus. There's a card associated with each island, and it will say you might score 3 points for every region you control for moving this particular island, or they all have a different unique scoring mechanism. There's just so many ways to collect points, but that fluid moving board that you can shift and change where the islands are positioned, the way in which each round the regions on those islands are worth different points as you go through subsequent ages, and you have to reshuffle and do everything differently. There's sort of like a side thing where your hero can go on adventures and you have to sort of chase this adventure token that moves around the board. It's just an amazing game. I thought it went so smoothly. It was just a lot of fun. It's a big game, but man, this was something special. It's so up my alley. If you have similar tastes to me, I'll tell you that you'll love it. But also, I have seen that for some reason there is a shipment coming in of this game to Australia, and Advent Games has it on pre-order. So I've never ever seen it go for sale in Australia because the company Tabular Games is in Europe, and they only ship within Europe. So this is now a good as chance as any to get your hands on it while in Australia that we know it's.
So how did you get your copy of it then?
I got it secondhand.
Right.
So the cool thing about Mysthea, it was the first game that it's in a duo of games. The follow-up game for it was Ikeon. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah. And that was sort of like the ground world of the universe that they'd made, and Mysthea is like the floating islands up above. And then you can combine those two games together to make a third game called Mysthea the Fall. I don't have Ikeon. I'm always looking out for a second copy and can never find it. But someone had a friend selling the pair, and they just had Mysthea, and so I was able to get it that way. But I loved this game. It saddens me a little bit that it takes much longer to play than I anticipated, because that just means I'm not going to table it as much. But in reality, you could just say, let's just play to 2 ages instead of 3. You can just completely shorten the game like that, and it really wouldn't break the game at all. But man, so good. I absolutely loved every single minute of it.
Next time you have a look at the rulebook, just see if my name's in there. I did do some work on this rulebook. I can't remember what. I mean, this is going back 3 or 4 years now, but I remember I was involved. I think they sent me a very early draft of it, and I may have done like a first pass edit of it or something like that for a couple of days, and then sent it back to them. And I had nothing to do with it after that. Whereas other rulebooks that I've worked on, I'm with it all the way through until it goes to the printers. Yeah. This one, I think I worked on the skeletal shell of it and the text, and then passed it back to them, and then they did the rest of it. But I've had a copy of this game since they sent me a copy of the game after I did the rulebook work, once it had come out, but it's not been played. And I can tell you now, what you've just said has brought a smile to my face, because this isn't a big popular game. Not many people know about this game, and it doesn't have a high rating on BGG. But the reason why it's brought a smile to my face is it doesn't matter how good a game is, there is going to be somebody out there who really loves it. And that's what we found with this game. So, yeah.
It was quite good at the Melbourne Game Day too, because that was a long sitting, and I was playing other games, and there was just this moment where these people arose from a table, and it was like, it was a long sitting.
And do you think that 3 hours is a long game? Because 3 hours to me is like, yeah, that's all right.
No, that's not super long, but I mean, when it has so many similarities to Blood Rage, and Blood Rage you can play in an hour and a bit, it feels longer. But I was so invested because with the deck building, it's a market, so you're buying cards and you're getting rid of some, and it's just everything feels a lot tighter. The movement's tight, battles are tight. Every decision is really, really tight in that game.
It also didn't help that you're basically in the main table in the main room as well. So
yes,
it was everyone saw when you guys finished your game. It was very cool.
Yeah, it was good fun.
What about yourself, Paul? What's the table?
This last week has been a very exciting week because I've played both of these games that are behind me. So Thursday, I basically invited friends round and we played episode 1 and episode 2 of Perseverance. And this was because I'm starting work on the script for the How to Play videos next week. And there's no way that I can sit down. I mean, I could just sit down with the rulebook and say, right, I'm going to write a How to Play video. But for me, I need to play the game first. And having played the game, I know now how I would teach that game. So therefore, because when I'm writing a script for a How to Play video, I don't just translate the rulebook into a video.
Yeah.
I think, how would I teach this game? And quite often, that doesn't follow the same structure as the rulebook. But as I mentioned earlier on, Perseverance has been one of my most anticipated releases of this year. So getting to play it again on Thursday, I was super looking forward to it. And because it's been so long since I played it, I couldn't remember anything about it. People were like, so how do we play this game then? And I'm like, we're going to be learning this game from the rulebook. So the entire day was streamed for Patreon supporters. This is not the kind of video that I would really want as a public video or on BGG. But it was basically 3 people sitting down, getting Perseverance out, learning how to play it from the rulebook. So the day was I think it was 2 hours of reading through the rulebook and setting it up.
It was, yeah.
and then we played it. And then after lunch, we got episode 2 out, and it was about another hour and a half of reading through the rulebook and learning how to play it. And then we played most of episode 2. We didn't get episode 2 finished. But it was a highlight. It was a highlight in a way, but I knew it was going to be good because I remember liking the game from before. So it was just a case of playing with the finished components, and the production quality is amazing. So yeah, that was really good. And then Friday was Polis, which was actually unplanned. Every week on a Monday, I publish my plans for the week. And when I published my plans for the week on last Monday, the Friday slot had a big question mark and it said mystery game. And it wasn't that I had some top secret game. It was, I'd mailed out all of my local friends and I was waiting to see who could come round because I choose the game based on how many people can come round. And by Monday, nobody had replied. So I just put it in as mystery game. And then on Tuesday, Rob said, I'm free on Friday. And I was like, okay, well, there's only one person. I mean, there's like 20 people on this list. And only one person can come round this Friday. So I went, well, I'll tell you what, we've been talking about Polis. Let's do it. It does mean taking the day off to learn it, but let's do it. And then on the Thursday night, another Rob mailed me and said, I can come round tomorrow. And I was like, well, we've already arranged that we're going to play Polis, but we can still do Polis, but we'll just play it with 2 people on one side. And it worked quite well because Rob S., who was with me, he's got the original edition, and he's been talking to me for the last 4 years saying, we really need to play Polis, it's really good. And yeah, played it on Friday. And what was interesting about Polis is, again, it's not a big, popular, well-known game, but the people who do know it and the people who have played it have said it's a massively underrated game. It is exceptional. So I already had high expectations going in. In fact, when I did the unboxing video, which was like a couple of weeks ago, I think, people popped in the chat who I've never heard of before. who obviously saw that I was doing an unboxing video of it. They've never been into any of my other videos, but suddenly they're there saying, "Oh, it's great that you're doing an unboxing video. This is a fantastic game." And I was like, "Oh, right, okay." And then we played it. We played it Friday afternoon as a learning game, which went out to Patreon supporters. It's just great. I mean, it's without me without me spending 5 minutes just saying the game's great. I should probably describe it. I'm not going to say it's a war game because I don't think it's a war game by my definition of a war game. It is a historical-based game that recreates the war in the 5th century BC between Athens and Sparta, and there is fighting in it. Whether you want to class that as a war game or not, that's up to you, but there's a lot more going on than fighting. It is a Euro-style game in that you have actions to choose from. Actions are taking tribute from the different territories to get the resources, using the resources to build hoplites and galleys, trading with your merchants and everything else. And one of the actions you can do is you can move your hoplites into another area, and that might trigger a battle. So there is conflict in the game. There is some fighting involved, but I wouldn't have said it's a war game. I mean, the description of it says it's much more than a war game, which it is.
Yeah.
If you think it's a war game, it's much more than that. It's very tight. It's very clever. A lot of the mechanisms are ones that you've seen in other similar games. But one of the really nice things about the game that I found is the game's played over 3 rounds. And in round 1, the stacking limit is 3 hoplites per player per territory. And a battle only happens when there are 8 hoplites in an area. So in round 1 of the game, you could have 3 in there, I could have 3 in there, and we're just hurling insults at each other. There's no actual fight. But also what's interesting is in round 3 of the game, if you have 2 hoplites in there, the stacking limit in round 3 is 5. So I could put 5 in there, and you've got 2, and there isn't a battle, because a battle only happens when there's 8. So that bit's quite clever. But it was a very, very... You said the word tight earlier on. This game is very tight. I mean, at the end of each round, you need to feed all of your population, and you don't really start with any wheat. You've got to tribute for the wheat. You've got to trade for the wheat. And the reason why we won the game as Sparta is that in round 3, Rob, who was playing Athens, the other Rob who was playing Athens, he took a fairly... he recreated history by doing an attack in Sicily, which went horribly wrong, which is what happened.
What happened in reality, yeah.
Yeah, but Rob didn't take tribute early, and he didn't get the wheat he needed. By this point, Sparta had built up enough hoplites that we just started attacking everywhere we could. And Rob just kept running away, and then we kept attacking again. And what we did is we just reduced the number of hoplites that Athens had, which meant he wasn't able to actually take tribute. And he effectively resigned from the game. It was near the end anyway, but he had no wheat, no way of getting wheat, and wasn't going to be able to... So basically, Athens just starved and everything else. But as I mentioned earlier on, this is a game I want to play again straight away. In fact, yesterday afternoon, I asked Peter Rushton, a patron supporter of mine, if he was available in the afternoon to play a game of it on Tabletop Simulator. And he said, "Oh, no, it's a bit long, haven't got time." So we did a quick game of Undaunted instead. But yeah, it's still set up on my table. I don't want to put it away yet. I'm going to have to tomorrow. But it's,
so how long would a
really
typical
good
game take?
Well, it took us 3 hours. But what was interesting is the game in the afternoon, which was a practice game, we were learning pretty much from the rule book. We didn't manage to get it finished because I had to go and get the car from the garage. But we were about 15, 20 minutes from the end. So with 2 players learning from the rule book, we'd both read it first, but we kind of started again, was about 2.5 hours. So I was surprised that the live stream, the actual playthrough was 3. But we were chatting to the audience, we were discussing things, we were explaining things. I think it's probably a 90-minute game with 2 players who really know the game. Maybe 2 hours when you're learning it. But it's not a long game, I don't think. We just made it long on the Friday night. Yeah. But if you like your historical simulations and really tight games with quite a bit of conflict in, then I definitely recommend it. Yeah, really good. And this is this is the second edition. So it's not called second edition. On BGG, it's just called Polis, but it's a re-implementation of Polis Fight for the Hegemony or something, which was effectively the first edition of the game. Devere Games picked it up, changed the artwork. The game has been tweaked as well, so this is effectively the second edition of the game.
Okay.
Devere Games are on fire at the moment.
They're
I
on a
feel like.
streak.
Yeah. And their production quality is really good as well. So the rule book, I have to say, the rule book for Polis is very wordy. When I saw the size of the rule book and the amount of text in there, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a massively complex war game. And as it is, the rule book is it's very, very wordy, but a lot of the actions are actually fairly simple. And once we were playing the learning game in the afternoon, we were like, okay, so this section on building hoplites is like an entire page of rules. And what it means is choose a city you control, spend a number of metal, move cubes from here to here. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Okay, right. It's a fairly simple action, but the rulebook goes into lots of details and exceptions and things like that, and with lots of examples. So yeah, good.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. So,
all right. So that will be the final one of our sizzles tonight. But before we move on to the next section, we will just got to mention our sponsors. 2D6 Games, they are giving away a copy of the again sizzled, 2 times sizzled this month, Ark Nova. So, and I think I've seen this box. It exists. I've been to the house where it's being kept. And that's important because there's pretty much no one else in Australia that has this anymore. So all you got to do is jump onto our Facebook page and comment on what your board game goals are for 2022. And someone will win that at the end of the month when we do the random draw. So get to it. Only a couple of weeks of January left, which sounds ridiculous. But from there, we'll head to the board game bracket. All right. So the bracket battle, we'd set up last week, Maracaibo versus Barrage. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise to many that Barrage, an absolute darling of this podcast and our community, got the win over Maracaibo quite convincingly, nearly double the votes. So
wow,
Barrage will go through to round 3, and Maracaibo,
double the votes.
Yes, 67 to 120. So
I thought it was going to be closer than that.
I'm a bit surprised. I expected Maracaibo to give this a real good shake. So that's, but no, Barrage goes through. So there you have it. But we need to set up another one, and this is going to be fun. So we have.
I'm going to get Paul in my corner on this one.
Absolutely. So this is On Mars versus Blood Rage. So
exploration and colonization of the Red Planet versus Angry Vikings.
Yeah,
something like that.
Well, you'd be angry too if what's coming? Ragnarok is coming. You'd be angry. You'd want to fight people and get what you can. All right, so I'm going to pass it. I'm going to go to Jules first because I feel like I need to. He's outnumbered. He needs a leg up. He needs to go first. Jules, why is Blood Rage better than On Mars?
Well, first of all, it doesn't take 2.5 days to play. And you can learn it really quickly. It's just good fun. It's battles and treachery and Vikings and monsters. As I've said on a previous battle, it's fun on steroids. It's just a good time. The artwork is awesome. Every move you pull feels good. It's got cool mechanisms where you're trying to win certain areas and up the resources or the glory you get from battles. It's got divergent strategies. It's just so much fun. Like, who doesn't love getting a fire giant and slamming that down on the board and just scaring the crap out of everyone? It's so much fun. I absolutely love Blood Rage. It's a classic. I think it'll stay around for so many years to come. And it's just more accessible. I don't think there's an argument against that.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, I love Blood Rage. I'll happily play it any time. And I could probably play it 2 or 3 times or 4 times even in the time it takes to play one game of On Mars. So that's my case.
Fair enough. All right, well, Def, tell us.
Have we ever had a guest fight for one of the games? Should we get Paul in the ring
we did.
instead?
We did infamously have Stephen Bonico fight for Terraforming Mars.
We did.
So that was. Yeah, I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear Paul's thoughts on this. I'm guessing.
So I've never played Blood Rage.
Okay, well then you don't know if it's better or worse.
Which is quite shocking, but everything that Jules said about it is my opinion of it, based on everybody else who I know who has played it. It is fun. It is more accessible. It is a shorter game. And I think what you said about Blood Rage is going to be a game that's here to stay, as a classic. I think it is. On Mars is... And it's interesting because Maracaibo and Barrage are of a similar complexity. Whereas on Mars and Blood Rage, no, they're completely leagues apart. So I think this is all going to depend on the people voting for this. It's going to be down to their, maybe not which is the best game, because I'd find it very hard to compare these two games. For me, having never played Blood Rage, but knowing enough about it, On Mars would be my choice of game. But that's because that particular style of game and everything suits me. And I know what you're saying about the playtime, but I can play a 4-player game of On Mars in under 3 hours. Just under 3 hours. But yeah, a 4-player game of On Mars when everybody knows what they're doing is about a 3-hour game. Which is not bad. So yeah, I'd vote for On Mars, but that's because that fits my personal preference.
It was very succinct and unviolent. That's very good. Def, have you got anything else to add there?
No, really. I mean, Paul described it well. I do want to say something about being more accessible for Blood Rage. Throwing sticks at each other is more accessible. Doesn't make it a better game.
Fair point.
So...
Also, I didn't mention, but On Mars does have the Frost Giant expansion. It's underneath the insert. You just got to look. It's there. Yeah, it's totally there.
On Mars is a lot cooler than Earth, so Frost Giants makes a bit of sense, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, that was an interesting argument there, Def, but we'll go with it. So you can either vote for On Mars, Blood Rage, or throwing sticks. So I'm interested to see. I'd probably lean into the Blood Rage camp here personally, mainly because I've only played On Mars twice, and I think it's fair to say that both times weren't ideal situations, and it went really long on one of those times. The other time was on TTS, so I didn't really get the feel of it. But I've never had a bad game of Blood Rage, so it'll get my vote. But it's definitely not up to us. It's up to everyone in the community. So as per usual, get out there and vote. Check out our Instagram and on our Facebook page, and of course in our Discord channels as well. Get there and vote, and we'll announce the winner next week. But with that, we'll move straight on to our final segment, which is Swear an Oath. And as per usual, Swear an Oath is brought to us by Advent Games. They've finished, the Boxing Day sales are finished, but they've still got sales running for January. So there's loads of good deals there. And as Jules mentioned, they get these games in that are pretty hard to get a hold of, including Mysthea. But it's a bit of an unknown thing about Advent, that they do get a lot of these hard to get games, and they do retailer pledges of Kickstarters and things like that. So you might be able to find something you're looking for.
There's actually we've talked about how his website is so well organized. I'm pretty sure there's a section for hard to get games or rare games. Right. So click on that every once in a while and see what you can find.
Yeah. Might save you a few dollars if you're trying to find it out of an out of print game on the marketplace or something. But with that, I might go first because my oath is to continue my challenge for the year, which was to play every game in my collection. I'm still plodding on quite well. I've played 41 games from my collection this year. So I had a cracking start. I added Res Arcana, Viticulture, and Teotihuacan to the list this week, which, if anything, was a surprise that I haven't played Teo before this week. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's cool because I kind of said it, and I made the joke when I said I was going to do it that I don't want to turn up to game nights and expect people to play along with me. It's just, so I'll try and work through the games. But I went to the game night on Thursday, and first thing Dan said was, So we're going to play 51st Date because that's like one of the first games on your list because I'm going alphabetically. So I've got a lot of people helping me out, which I'm thankful for. But so I'll continue that, but I'm adding another oath, and it fits in with this as well because I own this game. But it's a specific oath because Paul is with us, and I know that he has played this game a lot on his channel, and I have watched him play it with the designers.
Oh boy.
Def and I tried out. Oh yeah. So Def and I tried out Imperium Classics a while ago. Now it's fair to say that the setting wasn't perfect. Def came around to my house in his goofy PJs at about 11 p.m. And neither of us had played the game, so we were learning it out of the rules. And we were getting going, and it just didn't click, didn't make sense. And we ended up realizing that we were reading out of the solo rulebook, which did not help.
Oh dear.
So at that point, there was a discussion of, do we just call it a night and Def goes home and that's the end of it? But no, we persevered and we played a game out of the rulebook, and we feel like we got the hang of it, right? We feel like we were doing it right. But both of us kind of ended the game and went, I expected more from that. And the thing that stood out for me was I played the Celts, I think, from memory. And Def, I can't remember who you played, but Def became an Empire way early in the game. He had a great card burning engine where he was just cycling through his deck multiple times, and I didn't. And so I always just felt like I was well behind the 8-ball through the whole game, and there's no way I can win this because I might not even get to an Empire. And I didn't. I stayed as a barbaric race. I didn't get to an Empire, and then I won the game. And both of us were kind of like that. For something that like the core, or not the core mechanism, but one of the main mechanisms of the game is to progress to this Empire, and the other half of your cards come into play. To never get there and still win the game felt a bit off for me. So I want to give it another go. That was a while ago now too. I want to give it another go, and I just want to ask you, Paul, is your experience seems to be much different to this game, where you just seem to really enjoy it right off the bat. Did you find was there any kind of, I guess, concern that the game didn't grab anyone else that you played with?
So I think the thing that you've touched on there is the 8 different, what are they called, nations that come with the game play very differently and massively differently. So the fact that you didn't make it to an Empire as the Celts or the Celts, however you want to pronounce it, that's okay. They may, even though they have got some cards, if that was to happen, it might not happen. Where one of the other nations, they will get to an Empire. I mean, one of them actually starts off as an Empire, I think, in Imperium Classics. One of them is an Empire to start with. So don't expect the two nations to play at all the same. They play very, very differently. Some of them will be doing things that another one won't. And yeah, it's extremely asymmetric. So don't think just because another player got to an Empire before you that puts you at a disadvantage. Your nation will just do things differently. Imperium. It's a very, very clever game, and I like the fact that there is actually quite a lot of historical stuff in there, even though it's just a bunch of like 30 cards or something with some text on. You think, well, how have they managed to? But they have. Nigel Buckle has done a great job at putting the thematic, nature of those nations into card game form. I would definitely suggest if you've not played for a while and you play again, definitely play the same nation and definitely stick with the low difficulty ones, because I remember on my third game, I thought, okay, I've played 2 times before. I know the game now. I'll play like King Arthur or the Utopians or something, and did not enjoy the game at all because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had these cards that were like, oh, if you do this, you can sink this and you can flood that, and I'm like, well, I'm lost. And I didn't actually know what I should be doing at the right time. But that's because the game is more, and I think this has caught a few people out. They've been looking for a sort of lightish, maybe card game with a Civilization style feel. And then they pick one of these decks and they go, oh yeah, I like them, I'll play them. And they just haven't got a clue what they're doing. And you've got to kind of learn how each deck is supposed to play. Now, the designers have done diaries on BGG to enable you to do that, and there's a little bit in the rulebook as well. But yeah, the nations definitely play very differently.
Well, anyway, so I'm going to get that to the table, and I've got a feeling Def might still be looking for a person to replay that with as well. So we should be able to make that work pretty soon. But that's my oath. I'll actually head to you, Def. How did you go?
Yeah,
with yours?
that was my oath to replay, to give a second chance to Imperium Classics, and I've failed miserably. So we may have to tackle that without the goofy PJs and maybe reading the correct rulebook this time.
Surely that'll help.
Yeah, I hope so. As far as a new oath, it's one thing that I was really looking forward to do these holidays around board games, and I didn't manage to do, and that was to get a group together for us to play an 18xx game. Played it a few times with Demi so far, but anybody will tell you these are games that you enjoy at higher player counts. And for various reasons, again, that didn't happen, but that will be my oath for next time to get a group together and we can play an 18xx game, either 18 Chesapeake, which is a nice introduction to it, or the madness that is 1862. See how many crazy people I can round up for that.
If we can coordinate a day, I'm in. Maybe Australia Day. What a great way to start to do Australia Day.
Yeah.
All right, Jules, what have you got, mate?
All right, so my previous oaths were to paint my minis in Unsettled. I'm very close to finishing them now. I'm just waiting on...
Doesn't count.
I've been waiting 2 weeks for some product to come in the mail to finish them off, and it still hasn't arrived, but I finally got a shipping notification. So that will come soon, and I'll get those finished. And my other one was to play a small game called Bristol 1350.
Oh,
and
yes.
I did that, and that was a smashing success. Like, that is absolutely a sizzle coming up. And I don't know why I hadn't heard of this game before. It was one of our community members, Joe, that he brought the game to the Melbourne Game Day. We didn't actually get to play it, but had opened it up and had a look at it. And it just looked really cool. So I went on my phone, looked up some quick how to plays, looked around the store, found the last copy and bought that and brought it home.
Yeah, nice.
And played that with my family yesterday. And we played one game and they're like, let's go again. And let's go. So we played 3 games back to back.
Nice.
And it was just so much fun. I will be talking about this in the near future, but absolutely awesome stuff. So for a new oath, I was looking through my collection and there's this one game I really enjoy. I've only played it once with other people and the rest of my plays have been solo. And I don't really enjoy the solo mode. The AI feels a bit too dumb. They make really nonsensical decisions. So I've never played it solo again. But with other people, it's fantastic. And that's the way it's meant to be played anyway. And that is Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Yeah, okay.
Big game, lots, 4X, loads of minis, and yeah, just all that good stuff. It's just been sitting there, and they're big boxes, and I'm running out of room, so I want to play it again and see if I want to keep it. I've got loads of, you probably gathered this already, Paul, but I love area control and battles and high conflict games. That's just my jam. But I've got a lot of them, and I don't need them all. So I want to get Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea to the table again. Ideally, I'd love to do a 6-player game because I've got the one of the expansions and have an epic game and see how that goes. So I, Jules Watson, swear I will get Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea played before the next time I'm on the podcast.
One of my favorite mechanisms in games is a follow action.
Yeah.
And this has had it, and it's obviously not one of the first, but it's a lot of games are doing it now. And I always go, oh, it's like Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea with the serfs.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Puerto Rico cough.
Yes. It definitely wasn't one of the first, but that's what I go back to. So I'm going to do something that I've never been able to do on this podcast ever before, and that is say, hey, guest, how did you go with your oath?
Yeah. So it's funny because the last time I was on, you'd asked me in advance. You said, Paul, you're going to have to decide something that you're going to do, and you're going to have to swear an oath to do it. So I thought about something, and then Def and Mike both said what their oaths were, and I was like, wait a minute, you're just saying what game you're going to play next week.
Yeah.
But my oath is this massive thing that's going to take me months to do. And I think I said that my oath was going to be that I am going to play through the entire campaign of the Pathfinder adventure card game. I think that's the oath that I said.
It was,
That's
yes.
it.
And I remember saying it at the time thinking, this is going to take me forever. But I did it. I played through, and it was,
done.
I think it was 11 live streams. I did it solo,
Wow.
but it took months, and I am so happy that I've done it because very similar to the Maracaibo campaign, the Journeys in Middle-earth campaign, Pathfinder adventure card game I really like. And I'm sat there, and I've got all of this content, and I've got this entire campaign, and I just don't have time to play it. It's the usual story. And every time I got it to the table, it was always, new players. We do chapter 1. And I never managed to get there. And it was great. And it was great for a couple of reasons. The first one, I thought the story was great. My character advanced through it. And the people who were joining in the live streams, it was the same people each time. And they were with
following
me on
the
that journey all the way through. And it was a great experience. So ticked off the box. The annoyance that I never got time to do it has gone away. Would I do that whole campaign again with other people? Yes, I would. Do I have another campaign that's twice as long? Yes, I do. But I'm not going to swear an oath to that one just yet. So my new oath, because I knew we were going to have to do this again. So I've been thinking about it, and I asked my Patreon supporters last night, and I looked at my big list of all of the things that I want to cover on the channel. And I'd already decided what my oath was going to be, but I've changed my mind whilst we've been recording.
Oh.
And I've now got 2 oaths. And the first one is, I'm going to get Hallertau back to the table.
Yeah,
which is not currently on my list of things I want to cover on the channel, but I will add it. And the other one, which again isn't on my list of things, is to get Mysthea played on the channel.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Wow.
I'll do it. I've got the game. The publisher sent me a copy of the game because I worked on the rulebook. I want to cover it at some point. So let's do it. So yeah, thank you for the inspiration. I will let you know when it's going to be. It won't be for at least a couple of months. Cool. Although Hallertau solo, I could probably do that one afternoon relatively easy. But Mysthea is going to take a little bit more time and planning. So there you go. I swear an oath that before I'm on the podcast again, I will have both of those games played, and there will be playthrough videos on the channel.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, I recommend Mysthea at 3 or 4 players. It goes to 5. Right. That's too much. 3 or 4.
Yeah, I won't do it at 5. 3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if there is ever a chance that we can tee it up, I'd be more than happy to play Hallertau virtually at any point, like even if that is with your table set up. And
I did do a Hallertau remote playthrough, I think with Tom Heath from Slicker Drips, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be always keen. All right, well, that brings us to the end of another show. And of course, just want to say a huge thanks to you, Paul, for coming back onto the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks for having me.
And we look forward to you being our first ever guest that's been on the show 3 times. Hopefully.
3 times.
That'd be great.
Yeah, more than happy. And if we sort of want to roughly pencil it in for January, then that might be a nice sort of thing that each January I come on.
Thing.
Yeah.
And I will come on next January and say, I've retired from doing videos. I'm now just geocaching, 24 hours a day geocaching with a GoPro on my helmet.
That's right. You're also doing it in a virtual room, so other people get to experience it with you.
Exactly. It's all live streamed. Yeah.
Fantastic. Also, big thanks to both Def and Jules for tonight's episode.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, Paul. That was awesome.
It's been great to talk to you again, mate.
Yeah.
And before we go, I don't even think we've mentioned this at all through this episode, but if you would like to see Paul's content, check out his YouTube channel, Gaming Rules. It's fantastic. Loads of content. Really clear and concise instruction through playthroughs, but through tutorials. But the playthroughs, as I mentioned earlier, I love the fact that you can get a feel for a game if you've had it a few different times. Maybe you're got to teach the game at a 3-player count. You can potentially find a 3-player version of it, a 2-player version solo. It's great. So big thank you, Paul, for everything that you do for the hobby. But definitely check out Gaming Rules if you haven't already.
Cool. Thank you.
And that will do us for the show. We'll catch you on episode 172. Cheers.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.